first time she had an episode where she needed epinephrine, I hesitated. And I hesitated bad. The biggest thing I learned from that was epi first, epi fast. I will never hesitate like that again.
Hey, welcome back to Allergy Survivor. I'm Matt Martin. Today we'll be joined by Calysta Murray. Calysta is raising children with allergies, and she's sharing her strategies and experience on Allergy Mom Diaries. I found Allergy Mom Diaries on Facebook and Instagram and thought that we could all benefit from her insight. So thanks for joining us today, Calysta.
Hi, I'm super happy to be here and excited for a good conversation.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I have a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old, and my toddler was diagnosed with severe food allergies around the age of 1. We noticed them earlier on, and it was life-changing and so overwhelming. And so I kind of looked to the internet and her allergists and just to get as much information as I possibly could to start to handle this new life that we were facing. And then I kind of felt like other people might benefit from what I had to say because I learned from so many other people, and so many other people, everybody does things a little bit different. And so I just kind of wanted to throw out like what I kind of do and how we've started to shift our own lives around the needs of our daughter.
I think that that's wise because everybody has to ultimately find what works best for them. And you're inherently blazing your own trail, and others that might be facing similar situation that you are could benefit specific from that. And maybe that opens up their path and new options for them as well.
I hope that I make a difference in somebody's allergy journey, because there's definitely been quite a few people who've made a difference in mine. There's lots of foods now that I didn't realize were even an option for us. Like just right off the bat, we found a super great mayonnaise alternative, and my daughter's allergic to eggs, and our whole house just switched to it. So that was just like one thing that we loved.
Sweet. Yeah, that's great making discoveries like that. That's always nice. Yeah. Do you remember what caused you to be aware of your kids having food allergies?
When I first had my daughter, I was scared right off the bat. There was no reason for me to think that she had any allergies. Like looking back, there were signs, especially as I've gotten more knowledge. Like looking back, I could see it very clearly from very, very early that she had allergies. But in the moment, I didn't know. And I was just really scared about them. One of the things that I kind of latched onto in the beginning was like, what if my kid has allergies? I'm scared to give her these foods, even though there was no real reason for me to think that. And then she started food. She started solid food. And I was still nervous, but I did it anyway. And then she was fine. And then we gave her eggs. And the first time she had eggs, it was fine. The second time we gave her eggs, I purposely left her hands not dirty, but like with the egg on them after she was done eating, which I learned now, do not do that. My allergist corrected that after I learned. But I gave her eggs, and I left her hands covered in them so that way she would be exposed to them. And she, on the second time, got super itchy. Face broke out in hives. And I was like, oh, no. I think this might be an issue. And that was the first time I noticed it as an allergy. So eventually we got to where we got that diagnosed, but after that we avoided eggs until we got in with her allergist. With her dairy allergy, the first time I noticed that, we were on vacation visiting our family in Alaska, and I gave her ice cream for the first time. She was 10 months old, I think, and she had ice cream for the first time, and in about 15 minutes, full blown hives all over her
Mm.
face. And I was like, oh man. But the way that we were able to get rid of it was like we could wipe her down with wipes or throw her in the bath, and it would help her skin. Especially because it was just the first time she had ever had it, so the reaction, thankfully, with this case, like wasn't super large, and we were able to handle it at home without epi.
Mm-hmm.
But that led to her vomiting for hours because not only
Oh.
does she have anaphylaxis to dairy, she also has FPIES. So she has atypical FPIES for both eggs and dairy. And then,
Mm.
sorry, she has quite a few allergies. She's got the three. The third one is sesame, and I learned this one because she was 2 years old. It was right after her second birthday. She had regularly had sesame oil and sesame. We thought we were keeping it in her diet with the sesame oil. But lots of people with sesame allergies can actually tolerate sesame oil. Not everybody, but some people, because it's like highly refined and the sesame protein isn't gonna isn't necessarily gonna trigger them. So we thought we were keeping it in her diet. And then we were sitting there eating hummus, and suddenly her mouth started to swell. Her
Mm.
face got hives, and she got really itchy. And that one ended up with epi. And
Mm.
from that moment on, I was like, well, we've got three major allergies now. And so even that sparked a whole new avenue for me to start learning, because each allergy is also so different. I didn't expect that when we first started learning about allergies. I didn't realize how different you kind of treat a dairy allergy versus a sesame allergy versus a nut allergy. Like, it's very, very odd.
Mm-hmm. On top of that, the just again speaking my own personal experience, how these different reactions vary from time to time. Over the course of my lifetime, I can say there's a typical reaction, but I never know. And of course, the doctors all reinforce that you never know what you're going to get, and the next one could be more severe, which is just it's just like talk about scary.
Yeah.
Like no matter if you have a relatively mild, then the next one could be far different and far worse.
Yes.
I'm just curious, did you have allergies yourself or your husband, potentially where genes were a factor in this?
We think genes are a factor, but we're not really sure exactly how. So I actually do have anaphylactic episodes, um, but we don't really know what causes them. We've suspected
Mm.
histamine intolerance, which was something that seems like it developed around when I was 14 years old, was when they first started. And I've kind of gotten it under control with my diet. I don't pay that much attention to it, um, just because I haven't had to. If I know I eat like a relatively high day, I'm very, very blessed because there are lots of people with a histamine intolerance who like you can't even spend excessive amounts of time in the sun without having
Mm.
histamine related issues or reactions. So we think that could be part of it, but again, we don't know what really causes it. And then my husband, he has several or lots of allergies, but none of them have been anaphylaxis. We have suspicions that when he was a baby or when he was little, he had FPIES, but this was 30 something years ago in Alaska, in an area where there's one hospital and there's family doctors, not necessarily even like mini pediatricians, and definitely not allergists in that area. So like he has issues with pitted fruits, most tree nuts, but none of them lead to, oh, and soy. We've recently discovered that he has a really hard time with soy.
Hmm.
Um, but like he's not having full body reactions. He'll have like itchiness of the mouth. Sometimes his body will get itchy, but that's pretty much it. So his sister is allergic to eggs, dairy, gluten, and soy. But again, she doesn't deal with anaphylaxis. It's like hormones and disruption and stuff
Right.
like that. So super interesting that we have one little girl who just her body is just totally different.
Yeah. And it sounds like, you're kind of thrown into this situation, and mentally it sounds like a part of you was sort of bracing for it.
Yeah.
Whether you had an inner sense or for whatever reason, you had your radar out, which is good. Yeah. How did you initially react, and how has that kind of played out as time has gone on?
When you first get a diagnosis like that, it's kind of like freeing in some sense, because then you don't have to be afraid of everything. You're mostly just kind of afraid of like the targeted things. It did make it extremely difficult for me to introduce the rest of the foods to her. And to be honest with you, and this is the opposite of what I've heard you're supposed to do and what her allergist has said, I'm terrified to give her the rest of the tree nuts.
Hmm.
She's great with almonds, but like she's never had walnuts. She's never had pecans. Like she's only had a few, and I'm so scared to give them to her because I have witnessed her have anaphylaxis a couple of times. So in some ways it's been very freeing and I feel great and I'm confident, and some days it's really great. Like I've learned how to bake better for her. I've learned how to make, like, I can make Taco Bell at home pretty well now. um,
Nice.
but in some ways it's also like uh, just emotionally draining. When she has a reaction, I have to work really hard not to show her like how much fear I really have, and
Hmm.
how like she recently had a reaction to I don't know what. It was just a
Hmm.
brief like
Yeah.
oral, like she had some hives or like a little rash around her mouth, and I lost it. I was freshly postpartum, like just a couple of weeks, so there
Mm.
was that on top of it as well. But I just kind of cried and cried and cried, and I was like, I just feel so sorry for her, and like it affects her, and more than anything, it affects her. She's little enough that um, she doesn't know any different. She knows what foods are safe and what are not safe. She knows she asks mommy and daddy first. Um, she knows not to eat anything that somebody else gives her. So she doesn't really know any different. But I am like sad for her because, my experience, I've had ice cream. I go to parties. I don't have to bring her a special birthday cake for me to be able to enjoy and feel included. I don't have to worry about, cross contamination when we go out to eat, when I'm on my own, obviously. But with her, this is probably something she's going to deal with for the rest of her life. Her allergist does believe that someday she's optimistic that she'll outgrow the egg and dairy allergies, but the sesame one is going to be one that she probably lives with for the rest of her life.
Hmm.
And like you can have a full life, and it's all good. There are lots of other foods that you can indulge in, but there's, I think, an underlying fear, which is super unfortunate, or an underlying like potential for distress. Not that you're always distressed, but there's a potential for distress and a potential for catastrophe that you kind of have to always be aware of. And I just feel a little sad when I think about how she will have to be aware like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I. It's not like there are things that could be worse, but and there are lots of people who function extremely well, and it's not like a. I don't want it to seem like it's a negative thing, or like this. I can't find the right words because it is kind of an inconvenience. Not that anybody with allergies is an inconvenience, but there is a always like my daughter will be inconvenienced. by the world, and the world shouldn't, have to cater to her 100% because she's in the minority here with how many people are allergic to eggs and dairy, right? You can't expect every restaurant to do what you need to do, but the fact that she has to be so aware. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I think you've got a great perspective. And I agree. At the end of the day, we can't expect, society to make every accommodation that's required for just a small number of individuals. I will say, and this is just speaking from my personal experience. So one of my earliest memories was breathing walnuts. I can only imagine what my mom went through. I think it was tougher for her. For me, that was the deal. That was simply my existence. I mean, there are people, there are children growing up in war zones. And of course, that's very sad. They don't know what it's like to not have that experience. I don't want to draw any comparisons, but whenever things are bad, I always kind of reference, hey, there's people that have it worse.
Absolutely.
But my childhood, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because as I make these posts about this is me at 4 years old and we were afraid of this happening, of course, my childhood was a dream. I look back to my memories of being 8, 9, 10 years old, growing up, a dream. I mean, I was so happy. They called me Guy Smiley. I was just happy. And I haven't really dug that far into a lot of stories, but there's this girl, they created an allergy awareness foundation. I think it's in England. And you see the pictures of this girl and she's just a beam of light. She's just sunshine. And she had allergies that I can't even comprehend. And it's really down to, and I have a child and we see friends and other kids and stuff. And some kids are like, it has nothing to do with allergies as far as their outlook on life or their attitude or whatever. So it's tough to balance that. It's like, yes, there are aspects of this that sucked, okay,
Yeah.
growing up. But that's such a small part. So when I'm talking about allergies, I'm talking about that. And yeah, it's like, there's things that aren't that fun, but as a whole, that's like, what percentage of me is that? It's a small percentage. It's really a perception that's a big deal. It's just funny that as much as you're talking about your child and her uprising, we're talking about how much we dread inconveniencing others too. And I think that that's a good perspective because we want to be reasonable and we want to, not be too demanding. And at the same time, we want to make sure, our number one job as parents is keeping our children safe.
Yeah. Well, as a mom, like that is so encouraging to hear because all I want for my children is to have a happy and easy childhood. And, if I can kind of ease that burden for her a bit, if we're making her birthday cake next week. So that way it's special. And her birthday party, she's wildly excited. It's unicorn themed. She's going to have a unicorn cake. And for the first time ever, I can't tell you how happy and excited I am for this. Every single piece of food that's going to be at this party will be safe for her. And
nice.
There's almost nowhere that feels like that. There's no event that we've ever gone to where I don't have to triple check the ingredients. I don't have to ask, what pan did you use to cook on this? Did you use a cast iron pan? Because those are porous and will hold her allergens. Like, I'm so thrilled and so excited. And I hope that someday she looks back on that party and is like, wow, Mom, Dad, I didn't have to worry about that. I mean, I was only 3, she's only 3. She's not having to worry about it right now. But I hope that these are the kinds of memories that she's going to have, and that she one day comes back and says, like, Mom, I had a really great childhood, and like, even with all those allergies, like, I didn't think anything of it. That was just how it was. So I hope that's what she gets.
Yeah. And maybe in some ways she appreciates things more. It's just tough to say. I think a lot of it has to do with, a person's personality and who they are.
Yep.
And this is just a small part of it. And it is nice that people are aware, and that's a lot of what obviously this is about, is creating awareness and understanding, because there'll always be, I say it myself, like, I still can't believe what like happens when I eat a nut, and the more amount of time that goes by. Let's say I get lucky and it hasn't happened for a year. Like, you just inherently kind of start to go into this mode where it seems like less of a threat. It seems more manageable. It seems less risky,
Yeah.
these situations. And of course, that's when it's going to happen. But so I can understand why people wouldn't get it too. Like, it doesn't even make any sense, like why the body would go crazy and react to this. And of course, it's just, people are, the doctors, everybody, the medical community is trying to figure it out. And it's very complicated.
I'm really grateful, though, that it seems like there's a lot more allergy awareness happening these days, and like the food products, specifically like a lot of the vegan food, because we avoid eggs and dairy. It seems like they're just getting a lot better, and there's a lot more options. Like, when you go to a restaurant, there's usually some sort of option or accommodation. Some restaurants are better than others, obviously, but if you tell them your allergies, some of them are like really strict with it, and like, they clearly, to me, that screams that the people who run those businesses know and love somebody with allergies, because they have a little more understanding, for sure. But like, I've seen lots more of research going on. More people are talking about it. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. I had always been pretty conscious about allergies just in general, because I never want to be responsible for accidentally putting somebody in danger. But there were still things that I didn't realize. I didn't realize how difficult navigating everyday life was. I didn't realize, like, you better have your snacks packed, because there's a good chance you're not going to be able to stop for something easily.
Yeah.
Or just like, the way that I cook is different now. I mean, I use different cutting boards. I use different sponges in the sinks to make sure that I'm keeping, allergens away. And the more that I've seen people talk about it, the more that people who don't have allergies, or don't know or love somebody with allergies, even they are becoming more conscious. Like, I've met waiters and servers who just now are like, I totally get it. I'm going to do my best to do this. And it just really, it makes me feel like less of a burden.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to apologize 10 million times when there's a server who, acts with care and understanding.
Yeah. And I am kind of realizing this, like, so I've been doing elimination diets just recently, and a website I came across, blackallergymama.com, she talks about reaching out to the manager before they go to a restaurant. And this is just me with my antiquated, like, oh, wow, that seems like, making a big deal about it. And then I'm thinking about it as a business owner or whatever. They have a customer. Like, talk about customer loyalty. There's a restaurant that my wife and I go to, and they have all my allergies on file. And so I walk into the place, and so when they bring up my name, they have it on file. Like, so I'm walking into a safe zone.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So on the flip side, it's just a green light indefinitely to go to that place. And so, what, you have one or two conversations where you got to smooth things out and get things right. And I think technology lends itself to, they don't have to keep a piece of paper somewhere, it's just like, that could be integrated. And, and so, on the flip side, there's huge benefits to places that are accommodating?
So there's this restaurant, a sushi restaurant that my husband and I wanted to try recently with my daughter. And I called, I don't always ask to talk to the manager first. Usually I just try to, call and see like what their protocol might be or if they can handle it. And so I called ahead of time and I asked them about it, and the server or the host, whoever answered, said like, I'm not really sure. Let me go figure out for you. So he goes and he's talking to whoever he needs to talk to. Eventually, the owner of the restaurant gets put on the phone with me, and he says, "You know what? I'm not sure. I don't know that we can handle this. Um, I want your business, but I don't want you to come in today. Don't come in today. I'm going to learn how to do this, and I'm going
Yeah.
to train my servers, and you come in tomorrow." And I will never go to another all-you-can-eat sushi place ever again, because that was one of the like kindest experiences I've ever had. He went and learned and then trained his staff on how to do it just so that way we would be there. And I respect him so much for saying, "Please don't come in yet."
Yeah. And then I think about it on this level too. It's like, okay, he's got a customer for life. And
Yep.
then also the next time, maybe 3 days after you called or 3 months after you called, somebody else calls with a similar situation. He's like, "Yep, we're good to go." He's
Yes.
like, tell me what tell me what's needed. And he's like, "We've already got 90% of that covered. We tweak this, we tweak that. We're ready for you in 5. We're ready for you tonight."
I've brought other people with allergies there because I was like, these guys know they can handle it. So no,
Yeah.
it was a beautiful experience. I was so, so happy. And that whole thing about not feeling like an inconvenience, because people with allergies are not inconveniences. They shouldn't be made to feel like inconveniences. And he did the most to make sure that we didn't feel like an inconvenience when we walked in.
Circling back on something you said earlier, that the first epi event with your child, did you have one handy? Or what yeah, what so and you were on vacation?
The first time she ever had epi was during a food challenge in her allergist clinic. So thankfully, we
Mm.
had professionals there who were there to help us. That situation was handled marvelously. I kind of look back on that as like, I never wanted to see her like that, but I felt really grateful that I did, especially in the care of her allergists in general. Because they showed me that you can handle this situation without panicking. And I saw the epi work immediately. She was all red, so, so uncomfortable. We laid her down, they gave her the epi, and within like 5 seconds, color was back to normal. She was settled and playing with a toy. So, on one hand, it was like horrible to witness. The other hand, it was like, I'm so glad that this happened here right now instead of on my own with no epi at all.
Yeah.
The first time she had epi, or the first time she had an episode where she needed epinephrine, and I was the one with her, and I was the only one with her. I actually haven't really talked about this like super publicly, which I don't mind sharing. I hesitated, and I hesitated bad. If I could redo that situation, I never would hesitate. The biggest thing I learned from that was epi first, epi fast. I wish so bad that I did it, but hindsight is 2020. I learned from that situation. Next time, I will do what I need to do. I will give her the epi, and I will follow the anaphylaxis action plan that was developed with her allergist. The way that situation happened was that was the sesame situation at 2 years
Mm-hmm.
old. I even we're sitting on the couch. She's eating the hummus. We're sharing it. Suddenly she's itchy, and oh no. Okay, I'm gonna just kind of watch and see if the second body system is affected. So her face swells up, and then full body hives. So her mouth, her lips were huge. So they say they say mouth is different than the rest of your body. It depends on I suppose like what your specific allergist says, and sometimes allergies present differently in children. It's also when they're 2 years old, they can't tell you if their heart is having problems. So you kind of just have to like really go with your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I gave her allergy medicine and then hoped that that would work. At this point, I didn't know that she needed a higher dose of that as well because she was, she's growing. You don't, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
like really on top of it, which her allergist didn't update me with that, but that's not really their fault. We hadn't seen them in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I gave her the allergy medicine. It didn't really help that much, a little bit. Then we decide with the, like after discussing with our family, we decided that we would just take her all the way to the children's hospital and sit in the parking lot and to see if it gets worse. And in the car, she was like coughing, and
Mm-hmm.
you could tell that she had some like nasal stuff going on. I look back like, duh, duh. But still, I was like, well, they're saying the outside influences and I'm not going with my gut, and I'm not going with my anaphylaxis action plan. I'm letting myself be influenced when I have that mom feeling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I still don't give her the epi. We drive like 45 minutes to the hospital because it's a
Mm-hmm.
children's hospital. Um, we walk in, and she started at in the car. She started to vomit.
Mm-hmm.
And anywhere that the vomit touched, her skin would just light up.
Oh, geez.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a whole thing. And looking back, I mean, I really can't. I wish that I had just given it to her when I thought I should.
Mm-hmm.
I will never hesitate like that again. We get into the hospital and they look at her. I barely have to say anything. They get her back into a room, and they take a little bit of time deciding because she does seem like she can breathe. But within just a minute or so, few minutes, they are like, "Yep, we're gonna give her epi," and
Mm-hmm.
they give her the second dose of the allergy medication, and they give her epi, and within 15 minutes, she's crawling around on the bed and playing with gloves and doing all of the things. So that situation was, I can't look back on it and say like I'm grateful that that happened, because I'm not. I wish that it didn't happen. I can look back on it and say, like I'm grateful for what I learned. I'm grateful that she was okay and that I had a moment to learn what not to do ever again. And some people choose not to talk about those kinds of things because you open yourself up to judgment from
Yeah.
other
Yep.
people, other parents, medical providers. But truthfully, I'm not the only person who's ever hesitated. And if I can explain this and I can tell my story, then hopefully somebody else won't hesitate next time.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, epi first, epi fast, follow the care, follow the plan that you develop with your care team. I wish that I did, but I can't spend all my time, like thinking about what I should have done. All I can do is now look forward at what I will do and what I will teach my daughter to do when I'm, not with her every second of every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've said it, and it couldn't be more true. Hindsight is 2020, and from that experience that it would have been best to have done that quickly. At the same time, let's say you had done it immediately. you never would have known how serious the situation, potentially, you never would have known how serious the situation was. And you might have been like, oh, well, I'm glad I played it safe. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that actually went, so I didn't use Epi for too long, for decades. And when I was first doing it, it led to a false sense of security because I underestimated how effective it was. And it's a whole story and requires context. But it's, again, hindsight is 2020. And the most important thing is that you learn from it and you have a perspective, and your gut seems to be telling you, your gut's guiding you in the right direction, and to listen to it and not hesitate. And it's completely understandable to hesitate. And again, you were monitoring the signs, you were on top of it, and you were ready to use it. The most important thing is that you weren't underestimating it. You had it ready. You were ready to use it. Yeah. And you could have pulled the trigger sooner, but you weren't taking it lightly by any means.
Right.
And yeah. And it all worked out. I personally, am just glad to have learned from my mistakes.
One thing that I also want to add about that situation was my husband was driving us to the hospital, and I sat in the back seat with her. I probably would have just called 911 or given her the epi. I wouldn't have put her in the car. I wouldn't have put her in the car if I couldn't sit back there with her and be able to rip her out of that car seat, because the concern with any kind of vomiting or issue like that is, aspirating. So I think it's important to note, probably don't put your kid in a car seat and drive for a long time when they're in the middle of a reaction like that without supervision.
Yeah, it would be reassuring. I don't know how quickly. It's really one of the biggest judgment calls. So I've had two. Life-threatening is a relative term. Two that where I was progressively suffocating, and it was a race against time. Ugh. And with both of those, the ambulance, my wife and I still talk about, because one just happened a couple of years ago that I can analyze from every single direction. And as you have done with this event, I've analyzed it. I'm still learning about what could be done, thinking of, preventative measures and this and that, to call an ambulance or not. That is such when facing this, it's just such a huge call. I will say I'm encouraged to hear how effective the epi is with your daughter, because as you may know, it's not always so quick.
Yeah.
And I kind of trash on some movies that make it seem like a magic bullet. Because it's normally not. Normally it's just slowing the absorption. And again, this isn't medical advice, people. This is just my understanding and what has been described to me. But it's great to hear that in the case of your daughter so far, that it really has been amazingly effective.
Yeah. And we've never had to give her the second dose of epi. I hope we never have to. We always carry 2 auto injectors with us at all times, because that first one has potential to not be super effective, or she may need more. I'm very hopeful that she doesn't, but I always want to be prepared for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. And EpiPens are, they're, now that there's generics and all that stuff, I just try, I've got, why not have a few more, just around, because I would think it's different for a 2-year-old, but with my most recent episode I saw what they do in the ER, and it's keep giving them.
Yeah.
It was more than 2. They just kept, I don't know how they were pacing it out or how they made the decision, but it wasn't just more and more on both of those experiences, to the point that they're probably balancing out how much the body can handle it. But no matter what, they can't let you stop breathing. So that is pretty much the lesser of the evils. But yeah, very intense situation. It kind of, I've just always wondered what, what my mom was going through, and she was a nurse, so I think that helped.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but at the
yeah.
same time, then I think it created a responsibility and burden to where this is on her shoulders, and so it's a lot. It's a lot, no matter under any circumstance.
As a mom, and I'm sure that you know, as you have your own kid or children, uh, you were absolutely not the burden, right? Like she did not think that you were a burden for
Oh no,
for
I
her.
no, but I always felt responsible for myself, and I learned, I when I was like figuring out the things, to the images that how I'm presenting. Okay, I'm trying to get people to see the world in our shoes. It's like I have to have an image of a young child reading ingredients. It's about that more than it is ER visits.
It truly is what it is. We've only had a handful of ER visits, but my daughter will bring me food every single day. Safe for me? Is this safe for me? Or she said, so I'll rip something open, something we've had a million times, which you should check the label every time, but if I'm pulling out of the same package, she'll say, yeah, you didn't check ingredients. Like, she calls me out,
Oh,
and
she
she's
is on
only
top of
3.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. See, so she's already doing everything that she can. Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome. Yeah. Any like crazy um conversations, or where people, something in public or unexpected, like conversations that you wouldn't expect, where people just didn't get it?
Trying to think. I feel like most people have been pretty receptive. Probably because I profusely apologize, which is something I should not really be doing. One quick, hey, I'm sorry, we've got some allergies. That might be okay, but I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to inconvenience you, but like, I'm, I'm trying to not do that. Um, but for the most part, I think most people are really, really responsive, and they seem to at least take it seriously. The only thing that really kind of happens is when somebody doesn't want to deal with it, they don't want to take the extra steps, they get annoyed that I've asked them, like, hey, can we get a glove change, please? They'll just be like, we can't handle this. There's no guarantee that it's safe. And they'll kind of like, it's almost like they try to make us feel unsafe so we just don't bother them. I've had that happen in places that we regularly frequent. So it's just kind of interesting. Like, it's person to person,
Mhm.
and it's not everybody else's responsibility to, again, cater to our needs, but it's usually just like not understanding in little ways. Uh, One experience that I had with my family, this has been a challenge because I feel like we annoy them, and they actually are very wonderful, and they don't act like they're super annoyed with us or anything, but we constantly double check everything, and I know that that may create feelings for them that, like, we don't trust them, but it's not that we don't trust them, it's just that, okay, here's the story. It was a holiday, and my parents made a ham and a turkey. The ham was safe for my daughter. It had none of her allergens. The turkey was not safe for my daughter. So obviously, we had planned on giving my daughter the turkey, or the ham, the one that was safe for her. Um, and bless his heart, my dad, he didn't do anything wrong in this, and I really want to make sure that everybody knows my dad had no malicious intent here. They My parents set up, and my dad always carves the meat. So he carved the turkey, and then he set the ham on the cutting board. And I said, hey, did you wash that cutting board? And he said, well, of course it's clean. And I was like, no, I mean like before. Like, between when you did the turkey and then did you wash it and then put it? And he said, no. Why? And I said, well, unfortunately, like that means now Gwen can't have that because it's been cross-contaminated. The turkey was cooked in butter. Gwen cannot have butter, and now you're using the same stuff. And he clearly he felt bad about it, and he immediately said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I was like, it's okay, it happens. Like we've got stuff for her, and her meal, I brought stuff that was as close to what everybody else's plates were going to look like anyway. And she was like 1.5, 2 years old. That kid probably wouldn't have eaten that much of the ham anyway. Right. But he said, I just don't live with this every day.
Yep.
So I'm just not as aware of it as you are. So in a moment, which to somebody could feel very like, man, you didn't even think about us. You didn't care to do this. It wasn't that he didn't care. My dad loves us more than anything in the whole world. He just didn't think about it because he doesn't have allergies. He doesn't have kids with allergies. He just doesn't, he's not around it. So it makes sense to me that in a moment, which he's now learned from, he would cross-contaminate.
Oh,
you don't think about it.
Yeah, it's not, it's a whole, it's breaking decades of habits, and it's a concept. It's just, like he's not putting a pile of turkey in front of your child. It's hard to imagine just being that cognizant without making a mistake, frankly,
Well, and as an allergy parent or an allergy spouse, which I've never referred to myself as because his allergies are so like, they're all the oral, like my mouth gets itchy type stuff. So worst case, he usually just takes a allergy pill and he's okay. But I just made a mistake today. I was making my husband coffee this morning and I put my creamer in his, which was silly because it has almond milk and he's allergic to almonds. And I realized I poured it and I said, oh, I forgot. And I had to make him a new one. I didn't give it to him. I caught it as I was pouring it. And I was like, that's why we have 2 different creamers in the fridge right now. Like I slipped up. It happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's hard not to. And it's,
and I live with it every day.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that other people it would slip.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I can't judge other people because I'm slipping up myself. And, I mean, there's just so many times where I've just like, don't feel like asking or don't feel like making the effort and taking a totally needless risk. So I would be the last person to judge anybody else, especially when they're not in that, mind frame to even really understand it, to how serious it can be.
Yeah.
Like cross-contamination is not as serious as my allergy is. Like there's not as much nut juice, like tree nut juice being used. I mean, one time there was there was something that was fermented, a whiskey or something fermented in a walnut cask. And I knew quickly, but that's, again, and there'll always be those things out there, but that's not going to kill me. It's a big deal, but it's not, but cross-contamination, like you're describing with dairy, or I assume with gluten, that is next level as far as being aware and cognizant.
It's definitely, difficult, but, not too much to handle. There's been many times where I've wanted to throw out my old pots and pans and stuff, or like I've recently learned how to really, really like clean stainless steel because we switched to it. I had never used it before. And stainless steel, and even then, is like the only thing that I feel comfortable with cooking. Like I'll cook eggs on it, and then if I wash it really, really good and then I put it through the dishwasher, then I'll feel okay about it. But I would not do that with with cast iron, those are so special. You're not supposed to scrub those, and if you scrub them, your grandma disowns you. And so we stay away from that. So we
Yeah.
stick to stainless steel for now.
Yeah. The trips to Alaska, from what you describe, are a good exercise in preparedness because you need to be more self-reliant in those situations. So, how do you prepare for going on a trip where you're not just jumping into the car and going to the hospital quickly?
Well, first thing, I never forget the epi, or not for a trip like that. If I don't, I'll also make sure it's not expired. You can use expired epinephrine to some extent. You should try to keep it, but like your own, whatever your allergist says. But most of the time they say, like, if you only have expired epi, you should use it. But like for a trip to Alaska where it's more difficult to get the care that you need very fast, especially if you're there in the winter, because the drive time is like doubled because of the weather conditions. Um, Always have the epi on hand. Have allergy medication on hand. Um, that's pretty much the main thing you can do. Having snacks in the car. In Alaska, there's often roadblocks or like road closures, and there's not really any detour. I've seen it where you've been locked on the same road for 4 hours or more. So having snacks, safe snacks for sure is a big one.
Being hungry, it creates a situation in which, our minds want to tell us it'll be okay. And this is not, this is from your child's perspective to some degree, but weddings are a big thing where you're there at the wedding, and I'm not brown bagging it at a wedding in my 20s. I'm eating what's in front of me, and I'm hoping for the best. And being hungry at a wedding isn't something I'm going to power through for 5 hours when there's a feast in front of me. And at the time, I didn't ever feel like drawing attention to it. But that can't be emphasized. That should be emphasized as much as anything, is be prepared with food. So that, especially with a small child, nobody wants to be on a 4-hour road trip when the child's hungry for 3.5 hours of it.
Right. Well, and I've seen on those stops, like people not, I wouldn't say they do it very much in the winter, but I've seen where, like in the summertime, the weather is nice. They're like, well, we're all camped out here. So I've seen people share stuff, or like, they might take out their food and, pass it out to a car, to somebody else, like, oh, hey, you want some of this? We don't really have that option. And so making sure that you have stuff specifically safe for you is super important. Even the other people in your car, they may have snacks, but they might not have snacks that are safe for you. So that's like huge. And now that my daughter is a little bit older and, she's a snack machine, I definitely have learned that. And I've learned, my newborn, well, I guess she's not a newborn anymore, my 4-month-old, she is showing signs of at least sensitivities. Hoping and praying that she doesn't have allergies, because I don't know if my heart can handle the stress of another one having allergies. Worst case, it's okay. It will be all right. But that's affecting what I can eat. So since she's a breastfed baby, so whatever I eat directly affects her. And we're noticing dairy and soy. And if you've ever tried to avoid soy, it is in everything. So I now have to have snacks. Like, I can't even trust just my daughter's snacks anymore. Even though they're dairy free, even her snacks have soy in them. So it's in everything.
It's in everything. It's incredible. And finding substitutes for that, just because it's usually a flavor thing. yeah, finding, I've just done a few elimination diets and that's been invaluable. Finding a substitute that can cover 3% of the uses for soy is a huge breakthrough. A coconut amino is something specifically that I carried with me to restaurants. And if I don't have it, we just don't go because it's just such, you know, it's like soy sauce, but without
Yeah.
it, like a little bit bland. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We just started using coconut aminos in our cooking because of that. And,
Mhm.
it's okay. It's not soy, but it works. It gets the
Yeah.
job done for sure.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like you and your spouse were pretty much on the same page with this, and you've been approaching it as a team, and your family is, you know, really cognizant, and everybody's doing their best, and that
Yeah.
I think is an important element.
Yes. One thing that my sister did to make my daughter feel included, I literally could have cried, probably did. Uh, for Christmas, all of the kids, they love to decorate Christmas cookies, and obviously with a milk and egg allergy, that's kind of difficult to do. But she, weeks before, asked me like, what butter should I use, and I got to send her recommendations. And she even used disposable trays to cook everything. And then she brought them, and there's not many people that I trust to cook for my daughter. Um, but she specifically made cookies and frosting that was safe, so my daughter could decorate cookies with her cousins. And it was like, I those moments, I think that they might seem like small things to them when they're doing them, but like they make me feel so special. My other sister, just last week, texted me randomly and was like, "Did you get the book?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I checked my mail. She sent me an allergy cookbook just because she saw it and was thinking of me. And I'm so blessed to have so many people in our family who like see what it feels like, and they know, they're starting to really understand, and they clearly care so much, and that is invaluable to me.
I'm just curious if you've experienced a kind of help that's well intentioned but not helpful.
Not specifically like related to the allergies, just because it's really difficult for me to accept help related to this, because I think that I maybe would if it was me, if the risk was me and I could weigh that and make that decision. Uh, but because it's my daughter and she's so little and so innocent, and just it's really difficult for me to accept stuff from somebody else, because I didn't see how they prepared that. I didn't check those ingredients, so it is really difficult for me to do that. I have had family members like, they offer to make stuff, or somebody offers to make stuff for her, and very well intentioned. The problem was never then, it was me, because I was scared. I was scared that maybe they didn't wash their hands between touching one ingredient and the next ingredient, or like they're making a batch of cookies for everybody else and they're making a separate batch for my daughter. This is not my sister who did this. Nobody did this specifically. This is just what is playing in my mind.
Hmm.
Like one batch of cookies is safe, one batch is not. But if they're making them at the same time, uh, what's the risk there? Did you put them in the oven at the same time? Uh, which we don't know for sure if that's a concern, but we've never
Hmm.
wanted to risk and find out if that's really a problem. I had a substitute. So my daughter goes to daycare uh, when I was still teaching, and she had a substitute teacher in there, and we had just walked in. Everybody else, all of the other kids were sitting down eating their lunch. They've got yogurt and cheese all over the table. She
Mm.
usually has a designated spot, and her teachers are incredible. Um, but there was a sub, I'd never seen her before, and she has her gloves on, and she was like, "Oh, I'll take that," and she took my daughter's lunchbox out of my hands, and I was like, like, hold on a second, you can't do that, because if you get any yogurt on that, like, I don't know if the food's
Wow.
contaminated now, or so that was kind of a thing that was, well intentioned. She didn't know any
Hmm.
better. She wanted to get my daughter set up for breakfast right away, but she didn't know, my daughter didn't know she had allergies. And
Hmm.
her normal teacher, there's usually two teachers in the room. Her normal teacher just happened to be with another student at the moment. So,
Hmm.
well intentioned, but she didn't know any better. And situations like that kind of make me nervous about letting my daughter out
Understandably.
of out of my sight. But as she gets older, she'll be able to handle it. The biggest thing that I found is, like, everything pretty much is well intentioned. Nobody wants to hurt Gwen, and
Hmm.
so I haven't run into anything that's, like, been overboard.
And it's kind of a trade-off in some ways. You brought up the example with your sister. She is proactively describing all of the steps that she's taking to show you how aware she is on how many levels.
Yes.
Without somebody describing those, you've got to cover it, 50 different ways, like as some of them you described. And it's a question of, do I want to have this labored conversation where I'm kind of putting this person on the spot, and I don't, do both of us want to
Right.
go through this to the level to which I feel comfortable about it? And you don't know, maybe maybe they've taken 20 steps to make it good. Maybe they've taken two, and maybe 20 is enough. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's
Right.
something that you haven't thought of even, or
Right.
that you wouldn't think of to ask them right at that time. And then that's the one thing that,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
It's kind of a double-edged sword as well. So on one side, you let somebody cook for your kid who has allergies, and then you're like, did you wear gloves? Did you clean your oven? Luckily, I don't have to say that one, but, like, did you change your sponge? Did you run that through the dishwasher? Did you check those ingredients? Do you know the scientific names for these ingredients? Because sometimes they hide. So there's, like, on one hand, they're like, wow, you're letting me cook for your kid. Like, thank you. It's nice that you trust me. And then on the other hand, it's, well, do you trust me? You're asking me a million questions.
exactly
So
right.
it feels like, you're kind of going to hurt some feelings no matter what you do. You let somebody cook for them, but you're going to
Hmm.
give them the ninth degree. Is it the ninth degree? Is that a saying? You're going to give them whatever. And then you're going to offend them because you have to know. But you don't let somebody cook for them, then you offend them because you don't trust them. So
Right.
I often feel like I am walking this unsteady line of, like, well, I really do love you and I really do trust you. I don't think you're going to do anything on purpose, but
Yeah.
I don't want to have the conversation that offends you. I don't want you to think that I don't trust you, or that there's something else going on.
We don't want to judge other parents, and we don't want to feel judged by other parents. And that's just like such a huge thing in our lives. Because of how important it is for us to take care of our kids. And again, people with the best intentions wanting to help and cook and making a great effort to do so. And like you said, it's tough to thread the needle and not offending one way or
Yeah.
the other.
I would also feel really bad, and this has happened before, and I felt awful, where, like, somebody would go to the trouble of cooking something, and then I would hear or see something and be like, oh, that kind of, like, voids the other things that you did. That now increases the risk with her eating this food, and it's not that I don't care that you did this. I'm so appreciative that you made her this thing. You put yourself out to do this. But now I don't know that that's safe anymore
Right.
for her. And so then I'm, like, wasting food, or somebody else has to eat it, or I've wasted somebody else's time and money. So sometimes I'd rather just do it myself.
Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking for somebody to jump through nine hoops and then, oh, it doesn't work out for anybody. Yeah. I'm glad something that you said there triggered this. And this is like you were talking about with your dad. I'm just as guilty as anybody because now, of course, you do not send snacks with any trace of any peanut or tree nut. And I have been more guilty of that than my wife, which is so ironic that because that's a concept to me. Like I grew up in this world where that wasn't an issue and I'm aware, but, like I've eaten, like, for example, Nature Valley granola bars, oats and honey, a staple. They, in the 90s or at some point, they said that there may contain traces of nuts. They certainly have not in 40, 50 years, whatever. But you cannot pack those as a snack. They'll have my son eat those in a separate room or in a separate area.
Wow, that's so
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, exactly. And just like a conversation that my wife had with another mom, the mom was like, very responsive to the fact that I had not taken a precaution to the level to which was expected. And it's kind of funny how I'm not up to speed on some of these things, even though I have certainly an extreme allergy to that exact thing.
That's so interesting because like every school is so different. My daughter's school doesn't have any restrictions on what you can bring at all. You can bring peanuts, tree nuts, anything. She sits at the table with kids who have milk and like it, I think it's also partially based on specific kids' needs. So if there's a kid who has severe allergies and their doctor says like, "Hey, this kid cannot be in this room," then they may be able to, do an entire nut-free school or whatever. It's also interesting that they only really do nut-free schools. Dairy allergy is so much more common than you think it is.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I also like I pack other allergens, things that are not allergens for my daughter, but would be for somebody else. She has peanut butter sandwiches at school regularly, and
Mm-hmm.
I do ask like, "Hey, is there anybody in her class that has any allergies?" And they've said no so far. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I would change my habit of doing that if I knew that somebody else sitting at the table had an allergy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so interesting that that schools are so different. That I'm really glad to hear though, kind of uh, in general, not specific to your story, but
Yeah.
that they're not doing the like no peanut table and isolating the kids anymore
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's horrible. That's so
Well,
sad.
well, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, exactly. That's what they do to the kid who brings something that might have a trace of it.
Oh gosh.
But but along those lines, I think where you live in in the United States is exceptional because they don't want to draw attention to the child that's causing all of, for lack of a better term, causing all the fuss. So
Yeah.
they have the policy in place and they're not going to answer a question as to whether there's any, and of course, everybody or, everything is so litigious or people
Hmm.
suing people, then everybody's extra cautious. So I think those things playing into each other, normally it's just like, that's our policy. We don't know or couldn't say if it's because of any one child or children. And so that's the deal. And so I think, here in Chicago and I think in Michigan, and just from like some books that I've read, it seems like that's more typical, that they're just like blanket policy. And then there's a whole discussion over whether it's overcautious, to what degree they should be exposed, how they should be exposed, and all
Yeah.
that. Which everybody has a lot to learn about that, apparently.
Yeah. Well, it's so individualized. What one kid you with the walnuts, it was just the air that, like when you were grinding it up,
Yeah.
right? It was
Oh,
just the
yeah.
air. My daughter can be in the room with sesame, eggs, and dairy. She can have it cooked right there with her as long as she's not ingesting it. It seems to be fine. So it is so different for everybody. Her school is also really small. There's only a handful of kids, and at first, I don't think they had experience with major allergies at first. This was well intentioned. Uh, at first, they were like, "We'll put her at this table, or we'll put this table up here, and she'll sit on the far end." And I was like, "Whoa, like you don't gotta put her all the way over there, like with like 5 seats between. Just
Right.
just where she can't grab would be
Yeah. She's
appreciated."
not rubbing her arms all over
Yeah,
where a
yeah,
cheese sandwich was a minute ago.
yeah, and they realized right away. They're like, "Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense." And she's got her tiny little best friends. They eat their lunch, she eats hers, and then they go off and play. And that was just like a quick learning moment, and something I didn't even think of until they said it. And I was like, "Oh, I don't want her to be by herself."
Yeah. Oh, well,
So
that's kind of an advantage. I hadn't thought of that. That because you're because you're in, you're not in, let's say a huge public school system with tons of kids where they have to enact these huge policies,
mhm,
that they can kind of customize, and react like with a conversation like that. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate them. I love, 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 love her teachers.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Calysta, for taking the time today. This has been a great conversation, and I've only had a few of these conversations now, but I'm amazed at how much I'm learning from each one.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I find that I can't shut up about allergies these days. So any chance to get to talk about it, I'm happy to do it.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, have a great day.
You too.
Calysta Murray. Really appreciate her insight on these things. She's new in the journey, but has learned so much. As I learned a lot from this conversation, and I hope that you have as well. Please like and subscribe. All of this helps get the word out. Thanks.